Thank the 9 members of the House for their presence and their contributions at the beginning. I won't be accepting any of the amendments to the order of business. Just to inform Senator McDougall, the actual members' restaurant is actually closed from 12:30 to 2, so your proposal doesn't cover that. But the canteen is open for hot food and not just sandwiches, so you'd be glad to hear that. And as I said in my contribution, if you
eat in the Russell Hotel, of course.
We're on the response, and
a bit behind the times.
I don't want to bring the restaurant menu into the chamber.
Well, we might have to if he doesn't give us a proper sauce.
I'm sure Senator Norris Carrick has got a very good speed dial on his phone, and he can dial pizza.
You must be joking. Speed dial on my phone.
Please, let's abandon the frivolity.
Could I suggest to Senator Norris and Senator McDougall, rather than calling walk-through votes and calling quorums, they might be best served going off and getting proper food somewhere else rather than getting indigestion themselves. But as I did say, Carrick, in my contribution, we have allowed for a sus, and if there is a need for other needs of revival or whatever such vicissitudes the members want, I'm sure the Minister for Justice, when he's here in conjunction with the acting chair or yourself, can agree to such a sus. I'm very conscious of the sensitivities of the members and of their need to have nourishment and rest and water. Well, we're getting that already, Senator Conway Watch, you're dead right. But anyway, Senator Harkin and Senator Richmond raised the issue of Brexit, and it is an important EU summit today, a special one, and it's a bit like Groundhog Day, I suppose, at one level, but time is advancing, and there is a need for a decision to be made in regarding Brexit, and whether it's a 30th of June departure or whether it's a different date, that's a matter for the heads of state today. I think it is important that we, in this chamber, continue to ask and look to Westminster to solve this impasse and to show a leap of faith and an act of bravery in reaching a conclusion. We know what they don't want. They must now tell us what they want. And Senator Richmond Carlick raised a very important matter in regard to the actual diversification of transport and connectivity in a post-Brexit era. And I know that the matters he's raised are important for us, not just now, but also post-Brexit. And I'll be happy to Minister Ross come back to the House in regarding the matter. Cardiff Senator Harkin raised the PwC report on the National Children's Hospital, and I concur with you in terms of the need to have a debate on procurement and around capital projects. I think the report, it's 160 pages long. I haven't read all of it. I've read some of it, I have to be honest. I would actually ask all members of the House to read the report, because it is actually most interesting and informative from many perspectives. And I suppose what we must look at here and is to put in context, this report is dealing with a project that is unique in its scope, in its scale, in its complexity, by comparison to any other health infrastructure that we're building in the history of our country. What the report does quite clearly do is illustrates and identifies weaknesses in terms of the setup, in terms of planning, in terms of budgetary, in terms of execution and governance. And I would be happy to have a debate on the report in due course. Senator Harkin also raised the issue of trolleys, and the issue of trolleys is a huge concern. There is an increase, notwithstanding the level of investment by government, which has increased in terms of the 30 million winter investment plan, the opening of additional acute and community beds in many parts of the country, and it is one that we need to see tackled. I think linked to Senator Swanwick's contribution, which is a matter now for discussion by the IMO and the NAGP, is that we do need to see continued improvement and investment in primary care. And I agree with you that in terms of Defence Forces, I read the article this morning in the paper. I'll be happy to Minister Keogh come to the House again in regarding the matter. Caherlick, Senator McDougall, Senator Black and Senator Norris mentioned the Israeli election and the likely outcome of the talks that will take place now, given that no party has a majority in the Knesset and there's a coalition required. I think that whether it's Mr Netanyahu or Mr Gantz, it is important that those who want peace should know that it's about requiring a willingness to come in at the table and to engage in a spirit of cooperation, equality and fairness. And I'll be happy to Minister Coveney come back to the House. Senator Conway Walsh raised the issue of school secretaries, and I have attended the FORSA meeting in Cork on school secretaries. There is a huge administrative burden on schools which is growing. The Minister has in recent days, as you know, lifted the moratorium in terms of schools with enrolments of 700+, which will allow schools to employ additional school secretaries up to a maximum of 2 per schools. There are around 91 schools which meet this criteria, and there are 58 schools which will benefit immediately from this announcement, and the remaining 33 have already this level of staffing and will be permitted to fill under the clerical officer vacancy scheme as they arise. And there is an issue in schools. I addressed it yesterday in my contribution. They do fulfil a huge role in our schools. They are probably the most important job in the school to keep it functioning and to ensure it's running smoothly. And there is an anomaly, in my opinion, that needs to be addressed in the long term, and I hope it can be done. And in terms of women's aid report being published today, and you mentioned the issue of the 20,000 calls to women's aid, and I suppose in tandem with that, which we saw recently published, was the 31,000 in the north of our country, which the PSNI report on, which is 80 cases per day. Hopefully some of them are historical cases, given the way we've changed, as you said, the legislative route, but they are way too many in excess, and I fully agree with you. There's a need for action, both from a legislative point of view, from a resource perspective, and I suppose it is about ensuring that societal attitudes do change and that we educate young people and educate all people in terms of their attitude to women and around the issue of domestic violence and sexual violence, and about, I think, education having a role as well is critical. But I will be happy to that debate in due course, Senator Conway Walsh. Senator Mary-Louise O'Donnell made a very telling and fine contribution in terms of the role of immigration in our country, and I couldn't but completely agree with her in that we need to have the right inference put on immigration in our country. We have a huge skills shortage in our country today. Minister Humphreys has made some changes already to the work. If I can just finish, let me finish before you shoot me. Minister Humphreys has made some changes to the visa programme, but there are many more need to be put in place. Last week I met with Nursing Homes Ireland, who made the case in terms of the need to have changes brought to their sector in terms of the skills shortages, whether it's healthcare assistance, whether it's nursing. We've seen the changes that are required in our tourism sector, in our hospitality sector, and I agree with you completely. We need to have that landscape changed in terms of bringing people into work here to make a contribution to our society. We've always been an island of welcomes. We've always had people come to a country who've worked and who've made a contribution. As Senator Lawless will testify, it works the other way as well. When people travel across the world, they've made a very telling contribution to the societies they live in. And I agree with you. We need to change our visa permit to allow for people to come in from the outside. And you made comment in terms of India or other places, and I certainly have no issue with what you've suggested this morning. I'll be happy the Minister to come to the House. But there have been some changes made, but there's a lot more we can do, I accept that. And the other point you make is one that we should have a wider debate on as well, is in terms of immigration and the inference, the proper inference we should put on it. And Senator Swanwick made reference to the GP contract. Well, the IMO have welcomed the contract talks being concluded. We're not going to have a debate today because I think it's a matter now for discussion by the IMO in terms of its membership. I fully agree with you. There is a need to see a restoration of FEMPI. And also there's a need to see a continuation of investment in primary care, and I'd be happy to have that debate in due course, but I won't be accepting the amendments to the order of business for the reasons I've outlined.
Okay.